Here we go again. Welcome to Facilities First. It's my opportunity for me to give back to the people who keep us running behind the scenes in all the stores, casinos, and restaurants. Today, I actually got a guy that he probably never sleeps because he's in a casino 24/7, 365 years, or 365 days a year. So I'd like to welcome Tim Corson to the show. Tim is with Hard Rock Sacramento Fire Mountain. Tim, thanks for joining me today.
Appreciate it very much. Happy to
Well,
be here. So,
I look forward to getting to know you a little better. And, as we got to talking, we figured out we're both from the great state of Texas.
mhm,
And two things about Texas is you love your state and you love country music.
pretty much.
And what I heard from you was there were some concerts that you like going to. And so I asked you to pick out your top three. So drop them on me.
Yeah, so I would probably say, especially if we're talking about, I'm a big country music fan, and so I would probably say Willie Nelson's birthday party a few years back outside of Austin was amazing. Not just because Willie was there, but because there was quite a few just Central Texas type of musicians that we had a ball there. And then George Strait at the Houston Rodeo, you can never ever take that away. That's an amazing concert, amazing artist there. And then up in Colorado, here not too long ago, I saw Midway, and I'm a big fan. They're out of Dripping Springs, and they're pretty amazing group as well. So I'd have to say that would be my top three.
It's funny about George Strait because we all know he's a king,
Hmm.
but he's the only entertainer I know that can sit on a bar stool and have 50,000 people sing.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, he is just amazing. Now,
Yeah, he doesn't swing in on a big rope or a big chain and swing over the audience. He just stands up there and sings, and that's kind of just maybe maybe the way I would do it if I were doing it. So
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. I think you're referring to Garth Brooks. And actually, funny thing about Garth Brooks is I saw Garth in 1989, literally on a 10 by 12 stage,
Mhm.
and he had that same energy.
Yep,
And
yep.
so it was pretty cool. My buddy said he's going to go somewhere. I'm like, we were at a little bar in Dallas. No, he's not. Well, eat my words on that one.
Yep, yep. He did it. He did it. So
Let's go ahead and jump in and talk about you and put the spotlight on you and stop talking about country music.
okay.
So you're running a facility that doesn't shut down. I mean, you're 24 hours, 365 days a year. How do you manage the operations without getting burnt out and keeping your team and yourself refreshed?
Yeah, so it's even crazier at this specific facility. I've been doing this for 35 years now, and first time I've ever managed a hotel slash casino slash resort area or facility. And this one, not only does it not shut down, this one kicks into a new gear on those holidays. This is when it's at its full capacity and capability is when we are around holidays and all the folks. It's just what this particular business feeds off of is holidays, and so yeah, I'm on call 24 hours a day and have been in my entire career. But in this particular case, I've got an awesome staff that is running pretty darn well, and I'm always looking to improve it. That's one of the reasons they brought me out here, and we're making some really good headways. And I couldn't do it without the staff by all means. And we've got three shifts, so we're covering it 24 hours a day. All of them have a primary goal. Some of them do preventive maintenance, some of them do work orders, some do a combination, and then we have some specialty folks such as painters slash special projects. Then we have somebody dedicated to the hotel, and so we just kind of spread it out, and we seem to do pretty well as far as burnout goes. Uh, there's times in my career where I've come to the point where I felt I was a burnout. I always, after so many years of doing it, I kind of have a sixth sense on a job that's actually doable and not doable. And so I think when I find myself in one of those places where the job's actually undoable for whatever those reasons are, that's when I excel into that burnout phase. But as it stands right now, at my age, at coming up on 60 years old, somehow or another, I still have passion. And this is a great facility and a great team here. And so I'm doing pretty well here. I feel pretty good about it. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you don't look 60, just by the way.
trust me, I
That
am.
surprised
Trust
me.
me, I am.
So, being in the casino industry, what is probably the most underrated challenge that people wouldn't know that you face?
There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes here. There's basically a city that's behind the closed doors, and secured area, and we do so much back there. So I support multiple departments here in their goals to make this the premier facility in this particular part of the world in Northern California, and so it's. I'm both on the front side, on the customer facing side, but also very much behind the scenes, and the same can be said of my staff here. And so we have to find that balance of making sure that we put our face on, that we have to have in front of our customers out in the open area and the customer facing stuff. But at the same time, on the inside, we've got to, gear down and do the dirty work that's behind the scenes. And so this team is well established and knows what they're doing. When I came here, there was not a whole lot that I need to do outside of just I'm a service oriented guy. I understand the need to call not only the customer that's out in the casino and the hotel, my customer, but I look at all of my departments that we have here as also my customer, and that's what I'm pushing hard to make sure my staff understands as well, and they're picking it right up and working with me on it. So. Not sure I answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, you did, and it
Yeah.
made me think it's almost like I'm gonna compare it to Disney, is you have the back of the scenes that you have to get done, but then when you walk on that casino floor, it's almost like you're an entertainer in a sense, because you've gotta have that smile no matter what's going on, what's
Yeah.
breaking,
Yeah. And
and
it's not just an entertainer, but I I and every other person that works in this facility and any other like facility have to also be watching for the best interest and safety of not only the customers but the company itself. And so we're also making sure we have our safety and our security minds in set, and so we're looking for that as well. So go ahead.
so obviously you're a great multitasker.
We have to. Yeah, have to.
And did we decide, do you have the squirrel syndrome, ADHD too?
Uh, it depends. It depends on what the squirrel's name is and what the squirrel's doing. So yeah.
So you actually hit on something that I wanted to talk about. I mean, we've all been to casinos and they are literally a mini city.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so you have your HVAC, your air conditioning. I think you mentioned you have 6 restaurants there that are 24/7.
Yes. No, not 24/7, but six
Okay.
restaurants that are open. Depending on the time of year, they adjust their schedules to what's happening in this particular area. But certainly, some of them are open all the time. One of them specifically, the cafe, is open all the time. But yeah, it goes back and forth. But go ahead.
So with that, I mean, I was an area director for 7 stores, and that was during the daytime where I got to do it. I couldn't imagine running 6 restaurants and making sure they're up and running, plus the hotel, plus the casino. So I mean, what is probably the biggest beast behind there that you have to deal with on a constant basis?
So I have to be my staff and I have to we have to know a whole lot. Excuse me, have to know a little bit about a whole lot of subjects and not maybe be experts on everything, so that we can service any need that comes across. In the case of the restaurants, obviously we have a team that actually runs the restaurants themselves, and they're very successful at doing so. Our job is to support them. So we have to try to have a staff that has enough knowledge to be able to get in and do the work that's needed in order to keep the restaurants going. And failure is not an option. So we have to make sure that we adapt to whatever that challenge that's coming at us. And obviously there's the backing of quite a few vendors and contractors that we have to have in place. And we need to make sure they understand that when we ask them to jump, they need to jump, because that's the partnership we need to have with them. And so obviously they'll respond to the things that our in-house staff can't handle, or unable to handle that specific situation. So it's a team effort, and I would also say that because it's a 24-hour facility, the biggest thing that I find to be as a challenge is that we have to act as if we're the ones affected either on the customer side and or the actual team that's managing that specific part of the facility. We have to act like it's ours. We have to take ownership of it and act like it's affecting us in the same way it affects them. And so that mind frame has to be there. And so that's a constant coaching that I have to do to make sure I keep everybody at that level. Hey, we're a service. We have to provide a service that ties into the whole effort to keep this place running the way it's supposed to. And if we fail, there's a domino effect, or maybe in words, maybe not fail. If we're not able to achieve what we needed to do in order to keep them up and running or whatever their need might be, there's a domino effect to that, and everybody needs to understand that. And we're not perfect, and every once in a while we might not quite get that 100% success, but we're going to give it our best effort, and that's what's got to happen. So
So I think you touched on something that a lot of people don't really understand about facility managers is probably 25, maybe more percent of your job is actually being a teacher and an educator. So how do you do that with your staff? Do you have trainings? Do you just do on the job? How do you do that?
I think you have to manage the individual employee, or maybe it's the team sometimes, because some people learn, as we all know, with hands-on. Some people learn more with computer-based training. Some people need a combination. So I try to manage to the individual while still trying to get to my end goal. And so I think it's going to be a combination of the things you mentioned, and then always looking at new technology as it relates to training and keeping your eyes open for opportunities to enhance it in some way, shape, or form. A lot of this new AI training that's coming out right now, that where you can literally go in and watch a video on how a air conditioner is fixed, and they'll actually walk you through every single step. It's pretty darn cool, and it's also a great way to help with liability, or to liability, and making sure that you've proven that you've trained everybody on the jobs you're asking them to do. There's a good way to document that stuff, and that's important as well. But at the end of the day, it's really kind of leans back towards safety when it comes to training. For me, is just making sure that whatever task that we are given, that we're going to do it safe. And some of these new training technologies, in my opinion, help you to make them more safe, because they literally watch what they're doing, and they see the pitfalls and or the safety possibilities right smack dab in front of them. A lot of times you can tell them about how to be safe, and you can tell them about experiences you've had, but when you have your wisdom and your experience telling them at the same time that they're actually watching a video, or whatever that format is, I think that's a new ad that's a positive for our industry. So
I'm gonna jump to that because I think one of the cool things about AI is once you figure out how to use it as a tool
mhm,
and not as a human being,
right,
it becomes one of the most valuable things.
can
And
be.
so I know on the vendor side, we've had vendors that go in and I'll get a call that says, "Hey, your guy's watching something on his phone." And typically what they're doing is they're troubleshooting
Mhm.
through AI on their phone. And that makes it a whole game changer for us and for you guys as well.
Yeah, I think it's at the beginning of that right now. I mean, obviously AI is concerning to a lot of people, and I understand the reason why. But I think there's a place for it, especially when it comes to things like training and just quick access to really important information. Everything from SDS sheets to you know uh, how to react to emergencies, to how to fix an AC, to whatever that be. If there's good solid knowledge, it's like a best practice conversation. If there's good solid knowledge out there that it's available to everybody, there's always going to be a conversation about whether or not a person should be looking at their personal phone about information and all that kind of stuff. There's always going to be that, but it's there. And if we can figure out the tools to put it in front of people, I think it can only be a positive. So.
Yeah, I agree totally. So with it being 24/7 and if you have something break down, how do you juggle the not hurting the customer experience and getting stuff fixed?
Yeah, I think that, well, once again, the word safety comes back into play. Safety has to be the number one priority, not only safety for the customer, but for my staff and also the rest of our team here. So if we have an emergency situation, we're going to put that right smack dab in the beginning of the conversation. And then how do we achieve whatever fix is needed to get things back on in place, doing it safely? And then we start looking at, you know, what's the how are we going to get up again, it kind of we have to kind of zone in on what the issue is on that specific emergency. If we're talking about, let's say it's an HVAC unit or something on New Year's Eve or something along those lines that's not cool in the casino. So I immediately, and usually that's only going to happen at 2 a.m. in the morning, of course. And so, yeah, and so I make 100% sure that all of my staff has all the pertinent numbers, phone numbers that they need, and we start the process of getting everybody we need involved as quickly as we possibly can. And usually, one or two individuals on my staff is driving that part of it per my request, and sometimes, and they're empowered to do so without my request because we got to get things taken care of. But then at the same time, I have to be the conduit back to our executive team here so that they understand what's happening, who's affected, so that they can react to what on their side of it. So I have to be that conduit while I'm at the same time making sure that my staff is moving pronto to get things taken care of, and that we also have, if need be, vendors and the contractors moving and reacting the way that we need them to react. And so there's that. Again, always keeping in mind, is there anything I need to understand from a safety standpoint? Feed me information so that I can give my suggestions and or directives, and then I can also make sure I'm passing that over to the executive team that's affected too. So many ways to look at that. It really kind of ties to whatever that emergency might be. If the kitchen's down or something along those lines, it obviously all these things tie to income as well, and that's got to be something in the back of my mind. And why my staff might not understand the financial impact, it's my job to make sure they understand, hey, there's a bigger picture here. Please understand that what I'm asking you to do is not only affecting what you see, but it also affects some other things. So let's move, let's get this thing going. What can I do to back you up? What can I do? Do I need to be boots on the ground? Do I need to be doing this, at 2 a.m. being on my phone, two phones, one to corporate, excuse me, one to executive, one to my team, whatever it be. But I gotta be able to adapt to it, and so do they. So
And that's one of the great things about leaders, Tim, is the adaptability, and it shows true leadership.
yeah.
I was going to ask you about a typical day at Fire Mountain, but I've
Mhm.
already figured out there's not a
No,
typical day at
there's
Fire Mountain. But
no such thing.
you mentioned earlier you've been in it for 35 years.
35 years.
So every facility manager has a story. There's always one that just sticks out, and it might be that oh shoot moment, or it might be that I can't believe I just had to deal with this moment. Tell me about one of yours.
So I have had so many. Um, every I call it fire, blood, or flood. And I've had examples of all of them. Horrific situations, scary situations, you know, false call type situations to where we reacted something. Two come to mind. I used to manage a big mall, about 1 million square foot, right next to Columbine High School in Colorado, Littleton, Colorado. And it, on the day of what happened at Columbine, about, I think it was 10, 15 years afterwards, we had a pipe bomb um, placed in one of our back house corridors at the mall. It became national news. It was all over everything. My boss, we had two execs there. My boss was out, and so I had to handle the entire situation pretty much on my own. Obviously, he's on the phone and we're dealing with it together, but we had to evacuate the mall, and they wouldn't let us out off the property, but we had to go out in the parking lot, and we were out there for 8 hours, no bathrooms. It was crazy. And while they did their investigations, one of my techs that particular time was the guy that actually found the bomb because he smelled it. He was out in the mall and he smelled it. He went into the port corridor, and there's a pipe bomb literally shooting fire up onto an electrical panel. Scared the what out of me. It was a very scary day, and so that one comes to mind for sure. And then I would also give another example, being that early in my career, when I was still trying to go to college and try to do a 40, 50, 60 hour a week job, I was managing a facility right near NASA. It actually was a part of NASA, but it was a facility that housed three large companies in it that were their job was to manage the space shuttle program. And I was the chief engineer of that specific building. And when the space shuttle was either close to landing or close to taking off, we had a tornado come through the area. Literally was hopping on the ground and jumped up and went right over the top of my building, took out the glass centerway of the building. The entire top of the building was glass and took that all out. And um, that's when I understood the definition of stress, because they're already stressed because of the space shuttle situation. And so um, now I'm sitting here in a place where I have to try to figure out, and at a young age and very little experience, how to keep this building open so that they can do this extremely important job at the same time making sure everybody's safe, because there's no way they can go through the middle of the building anymore. So they have to get back and forth from one end to the other. So I had to figure out all that stuff with a lot of help from our corporate office at the time. I was with CB Richard Ellis at the time. And so what a craziness. I mean, that was, I think what happened there is I started to learn how to control my stress, how to control the way I'm reacting to something, because I realized that in that case, my staff was really just a sponge, kind of taking the energy off of me. And I had to take a deep breath, calm down. We're going to get through this, relay the same thing, not only to my staff, but to the folks that were working in the building, to my executive team, making sure that, hey, I'm not panicking. I'm going to do whatever's needed. Let's all get together and let's get this done. And because people feed off panic in a big way, and in this particular position that I do, and just like you, I'm sure you can't panic. You just can't. You got to be calm. So,
And it's funny because everything that you're hitting on
mhm,
are leadership skills that most people don't realize. Facility managers are leaders, and they set the tone for the whole team.
mhm.
And I always say you got to be like a duck on top of water. You look smooth and pretty, but underneath you're paddling like you know what. So that's I'll tell you, those are two different stories that are polar opposites, but they're probably some of the craziest ones I've actually heard.
Yeah, they were nuts. Yeah.
So how do you reflect? I mean, we all know Hard Rock, and we know it's bold and it's high energy. How do you reflect that culture in the way you run your facilities?
Um, I think it's a something you kind of just build into your business model. When you're when you're trying to reflect what type of business you're in, no matter if it's here or anywhere else, you have to understand the bigger picture, what the company's about, what its goals are, what it's trying to portray to its customer. You have to understand all of those things. And with a good executive team, which we have here, all of that's discussed on a fairly regular basis. So you understand it because you're in amongst it when you're on that side of the job. And so you just take that information and you bring it back and you just make sure that everything your staff is doing understands, what that bigger picture demands. And they need to react to the business demands that are. And again, part of those demands are what what the company is about. It's not just the demands of the everyday, work orders and PMs and putting out fires. It's also about making sure we're doing all that at this with that exact same mind frame to every single person on the staff. They need to understand that when they're out there doing whatever their task is, be it a residual task or a single task that happens just that one time, they need to keep in the back of their mind, I'm doing this, but at the same time, what am I being portrayed as? What is the customer saying while I'm doing it? And sometimes again, it's an internal customer as well. And so um, I think that I have to make sure that I take the bigger picture. It might be the whole bigger picture, but it's the important parts of the bigger picture and portray it in a way that my staff understands it. And it's not just here, but for sure here, because as you stated, Hard Rock has a great reputation and a a very specific way that they want to be seen, and for good reason. And
Yes.
that's really important that the rest of the staff sees it as well. So
So I'm going to be cheesy and play off the hard rock vibe and say, what differentiates a rock star vendor to a one hit wonder?
well, as we talked about earlier, when I ask a vendor or contractor to jump, I if they know me at all, they know I never cry wolf ever, because I understand the consequences of crying wolf. And so when I ask a contractor to jump, I need that contractor to jump. And if I say it in a way that because I'm in a really high stress situation, I will come back and apologize. And I have many times to say, hey, I was a little rough on you, or maybe I was a little abrupt on whatever I was asking of you that day, but I want to make sure you understand how much I appreciate you jumped when I needed you, and because of you and your efforts, you added to the success of whatever that outcome was. But I think that, for a seasoned guy like myself, I just make sure, even when I first come into a scenario, or a company, or a facility, I immediately start communicating with my vendors to say, look, I'm a guy that's been doing this for a long time. I'm going to tell you right up front, if I need you, I'm going to ask for your help, and I really need you to react to me. Because again, I don't do it just for my health. I'm doing it for a solid reason. We can discuss it. You can give me information. You might disagree with me. Feed me information to tell me why you're not reacting, or what needs to change about my request. But please react. Um, and then I would also say, just making sure to not become complacent. Complacency, we all know, is really difficult to not happen, but it needs to happen, especially if you've got I'm a very loyal person, with the understanding that obviously I have to, we have to put things out for three bid within, like, any scenario, to make sure we're being fair, and that's always super important. But we're going to have those vendors that we lean on, and if that vendor makes the list, it's because they've done something that's created a loyalty from me, or for a respect from me, and so that's a really big deal to me. We've got multiple vendors here that I'm proud to be working with, and they, just in the short time that I've been here, they understand what I'm doing. I think they respect my honesty and my, call it integrity, whatever you want to call it, but they're reacting well here. So
Well, trust and communication are go hand in hand in our
absolutely.
business. If we're not communicating from the vendor side, you guys aren't getting answers, and you got people asking you questions, and so that's one thing we talk about all the time. It's one of our Rock Three principles at Hero is communication.
Right.
So I can definitely understand that. So you've already talked a little bit about your leadership, but who did you have when you were younger that you kind of portrayed yourself after? Somebody that you kind of looked up to?
I've thought about that, and I've had quite a few really good mentors, both in my job field, but also in a different job field that was supporting me, or was my boss, or whomever it might be. I think back, I helped open up a skyscraper in downtown Austin, Texas, and tallest building in Austin, very, very high profile. I was a part of the construction team that completed the building shell, and then we started the actual the tenant construction on the individual floors. Um, and so, very heavy project management, very heavy construction type stuff. Plus, you're opening up an extremely high end, high technology building, and you're trying to learn these systems at the same time. You're buying tools, you're trying to hire a staff, and all kinds of all those things. My boss at that particular time was an ex-Army nuclear program guy, and while at the time I there were times when I would just wanted to just like, what are you doing? We're running this thing too stressful. But I look back at it, and we ran it like pretty much like a military operation, and dealing with the gremlins of a very high tech building was stressful. But I look back at it, and I'm thinking, I very much understood what a portrayed sense of urgency is. You know, sometimes, sense of urgency is obviously very important, but it also has to tie to a portrayed sense of urgency. So in other words, your customer or your whomever, your staff or whomever, your tenants, they need to understand that you take it seriously. Very much like I said about vendors, I take it seriously. And when I'm asked to jump, I need to jump and they need to see that I'm jumping. In addition to the evidence that's actually happening, and they need to see it, And so I would say that he would have been one of my top um, mentors, I guess you could say, and helped to shape the next level of leadership that I eventually obtained. I think that, and of course, I take that same thing and I push it down, the pipeline into my staff and make sure that they see it the way I see it. So
That's an awesome story. Sometimes we when we're younger, we don't realize the impact people are having on us.
oh, for sure.
But Tim, I think we're out of time here. I'm going to end it with one thing. I'm going to let you finish this sentence.
Mhm.
Facilities come first because
We're the essential. We're the most essential, possibly. Even if we're behind the scenes, we're just essential. And no facility can run without a solid backbone. And so I would say we're essential backbone of almost any organization, any facility. They all need them. There's not one that doesn't. You can't hire a robot to do what we do. And so that tribal knowledge, that professionalism, all of those things tie into being essential. And so proud of it too. I've been doing it forever. And so somehow or another, I still have passion in it. So
I love that word essential.
yeah.
So with that, Tim, I want to tell anybody if you're in the Sacramento area, go see Tim. Tell him
Mhm.
you saw him on this show, and maybe he'll slip you some chips or something. I don't
I
know.
can't do that. No, no, no.
But I appreciate your time today, Tim, and hope you have a blessed weekend and a long weekend for some of us. But for you, I don't know if it'll be a long weekend. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Facilities First.